Good morning, everyone. It is Thursday, the 1st of April. Welcome to the continuation of this week's California Citizens Redistricting Commission meeting. We will call the roll and then proceed to public comment.
Commissioner Ahmad,
Here.
Commissioner Akutagawa,
Here.
Commissioner Anderson,
Here.
Commissioner Fernandez,
Here.
Commissioner Fornshari,
Here.
Commissioner Kennedy,
Here,
Commissioner Lamont.
he will not be with us today.
Thank you. Commissioner Sadwani. Okay. Commissioner Sinai.
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Taylor,
Present.
Commissioner Toledo,
Here.
Commissioner Turner,
Here.
Commissioner Vasquez,
Here.
Commissioner Yee.
Here.
You have a quorum, Chair.
Very good. Thank you so much. Before we turn to public comment, I just wanted to ask if anyone has any general announcements, Director Hernandez or any of the commissioners. Director Hernandez.
Yes, I wanted to let the commission know that as of yesterday, Ms. Keller is no longer with the CRC. She was our paralegal.
Thank you for that. Commissioner Sinai.
I just wanted to give kudos to the Black Redistricting or Census and Redistricting Hub for their webinar. It was excellent, and I think there's a lot we can get from it. I know Commissioner Turner and I talked about it a little bit, but just the why, they hit it out of the ballpark when it comes to why is redistricting important. And kudos to all who are involved in putting that together.
Do we have information on a publicly accessible recording of that webinar?
I have asked for it, and as soon as we get it, I'll make sure to share, and we might want to post it, and along with others that people are doing so that people have different choices.
Right. Thank you. And I will take the opportunity to report that in yesterday's closed session, we were briefed on some personnel issues. We also had an opportunity to discuss potential litigation, but we took no action in the closed session. So with that, Katie, would you please share the instructions for public comment?
Yes, Chair. Good morning. In order to maximize transparency and public participation in our process, the commissioners will be taking public comment by phone. To call in, dial the telephone number provided on the live stream feed. It is 877-853-5247. When prompted, enter the meeting ID number provided on the live stream feed. It is 923-179-65628 for this meeting. When prompted to enter a participant ID, simply press the pound key. Once you have dialed in, you will be placed in a queue. To indicate you wish to comment, please press star 9. This will raise your hand for the moderator. When it is your turn to speak, you will hear a message that says, "The host would like you to talk." Please press star 6 to speak. If you would like to give your name, please state and spell it for the record. You are not required to provide your name to give public comment. Please make sure to mute your computer or live stream audio to prevent any feedback or distortion during your call. Once you are waiting in the queue, be alert for when it is your turn to speak, and again, please turn down the live stream volume. And we do not have anyone in the queue at this time.
Okay, we will have our line drawing team joining us shortly to make an initial presentation. Let me ask at this point, that will go until the morning break. Then after the morning break, we will be having the Legal Affairs Committee continuing the discussion on selection of counsel, outside litigation counsel, as well as VRA counsel. Since we have 10 minutes or so until the line drawers start their presentation, I wanted to ask if any of the subcommittees had anything that they wanted to bring up or continue from Monday. Commissioner Sinai.
You all should have received the email from Director Hernandez regarding federal inmates. And I will say that having spoken to a lot of different people, I hadn't heard that second piece about what the legislature had recommended around federal inmates. Because we haven't agendized it, we can't vote on it, but I just wanted to raise it up. I thought it was important to bring it to the full commission versus our subcommittee just to review and create a comment, because I think it's something we need to vote on, just like we voted for the first piece around state facilities. Alicia, I don't know if you wanted to say anything else on that.
Chair, I apologize. We do have someone in the queue for public comment when you're ready.
Okay, very good. Let me just respond to Commissioner Sinai by reiterating my suggestion that we contact Senator Padilla's office. Senator Padilla, having been a legislator and Secretary of State, is going to be very aware of this issue. And if anyone can shake useful numbers loose from the Federal Bureau of Prisons, I would imagine it would be a senator. And so I would really hope that the commission could, or the subcommittee could contact Senator Padilla and ask for his assistance in this matter.
Chair, can I open the
Yes.
line up? Okay, thank you.
Yes, please.
I just want to make sure you were done. Okay.
Yes.
And the floor is yours.
Good morning, Commissioners. This is Renee Westa Lusk. I just have a question regarding the old CRC website. There was talk at, I believe, a couple meetings ago that they were going to be able to restore the videos of the past public hearings and meetings of the CRC from 2010. I don't see anything on the old website at this time. Is there a date when that will become available?
Thank you, Ms. Westerlust. Could Director Seca give us an update on that?
Yes, actually, I don't have the update. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Singh is working on those videos currently, which will be posted on our YouTube station, and then we'll be able to upload to the website.
Very good. Thank you for that. Ms. Westerlust, did you have any other comment or question at this point?
Just that it would be helpful if those videos are made available to the public so people can see what was said about their communities in the past, if their community was represented at any of those hearings. And plus you can learn from those videos what good public input is versus maybe not adequate public input.
Right, and the commission has certainly expressed its interest in having those videos available for our own reference. So we will continue to monitor the progress on that, and we'll try to get word out specifically as to the progress on restoring the 2010 Commission's website to its full content before we took over. So thank you for your call.
Okay, thank you.
That was all our callers for now, Chair.
Thank you. Any other subcommittee item, Commissioner Anderson?
Back on the prisoner reallocation, that was not my actual, maybe I might have misunderstood. So we could clarify what essentially was the legislature saying, because we don't have that information, that those their recommendation is we do not consider the federal prisoners in any area at all. I mean, that's sort of how I read it. And was that exactly what it's saying?
Commissioner Sinai?
That's how I read it as well, but we'll look into it. Part of the reason is that federal prisoners may be from a whole nother state. You can move around in the federal system. And so we'll get more information when we do. That's why we wanted at the time to bring it forward and vote on it, because we wanted all the information. Plus we want to be able to speak to the California state database.
Great. Thank you, because I wanted some more clarification of that. So I appreciate subcommittees is looking into that for us. Thank you.
Very good. We will stand by for 4 minutes, at which time we anticipate having the line drawing team, Q2 and Haystack, with us for their presentation.
Chair Kennedy?
Yes.
Can I just get some clarification? Can we bring forward what we learned at our next meeting under our subcommittee reports, or our subcommittee reports only information, not action?
Now, when we reformatted the agenda back in November, the subcommittee updates item was modified to read report of subcommittee recommendations on which action may be taken. So my understanding, having been chair at the time, is that if subcommittees have recommendations, we would be able to act on them. Now, we would like to have as much detail as possible, as far in advance as possible, but that is my understanding. Marion, would you like to weigh in?
That is correct. And if you have additional information about what specific recommendations you want to present, that can be added to the agenda,
right,
even after the 14-day period, to give more information to the public.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Please.
We know on April 6th, are we having, because it was if needed one, are we having that meeting?
We will be discussing that before we close out today. So all of you, please be thinking what your subcommittee might need to have acted on if we do have that meeting Tuesday afternoon. And we will discuss that before we close out today. And Ms. McDonald has joined us. Good morning. And good morning, Mr. Drexler.
Good
Okay.
morning, Chair Kennedy.
We will hand it over to Q2 and Haystack. Welcome. We are very happy to have you on board with us from here on out, and look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you very much, Chair Kennedy and the rest of the commission. Good morning. We're very excited to be here today and finally to be on board. So I want to just thank Raul in particular to help getting paperwork through and getting the contract done. So we're on board and excited to be working with all of you moving forward. So today the presentation is we're going to have we have a number of our team on. I don't know if all the team is on, but we just wanted to do quick introductions and talk to you sort of about the process, you know, based on the plan that we had delivered to you, and to be available for any questions. And I think as we go throughout this presentation, we have about a 10, 11 slide presentation. So we have a lot of questions at the end, but if there's questions that come up by any of the commissioners throughout, we definitely welcome you to interrupt and ask. Before I get started, Karen, do you have anything else to add?
No, all good. Thank you, Andrew.
Okay, great. All right, so the first thing we want to do is just introduce the team. This is the team that we had presented to you in the proposal. Of course, you have Karen as the project leader and myself as the project manager. And then in terms of the rest of the team, we just wanted to quickly have them pop in and say hi so that you would have an opportunity to just match up some faces with names as we work together. I know, and I'm going to start with Jamie if she's on. I know I can't see everybody who's on, but if she's on, she will do a quick hello. I know she was getting her second vaccine shot and was not feeling good from that. So is Jamie on?
Yes, I don't think Jamie's on. Andrew
Okay.
and Sue is still waiting for her invitation. So hopefully
Okay.
she'll have that by the time we get to Sue. Thank you.
All right. Sounds good. I did see Tamina. So I will turn it over for Tamina to quick say hello.
Good morning, commissioners. Thank you so much for having us today. My name is Tamina Ramos-Alon. I am an attorney by training, but I'm also a line drawer. I used to work for the statewide database back when I was an undergrad at UC Berkeley. And in the last redistricting, I managed the 6 California redistricting assistance sites and based myself out of the Berkeley assistance site. I was also one of the line drawers for the last commission in 2011. And my area of focus was the San Francisco Bay Area, where I'm from. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Next, we have John O'Neill.
Hey all, I've been working in nonpartisan redistricting for a time. I've been very, very fortunate to be working in that since it's a pretty tiny field. But I worked with the Haystack folks back in 2011, supporting in a minor way the work they did there in Arizona. And then in 2015, I was very, very fortunate to work with the Florida Fair Districts Now Coalition plaintiffs in Florida, where I drew an alternative nonpartisan state senate and congressional maps, which were adopted as the official maps there, which was exciting. This was the first time a partisan map was ever struck down as a partisan gerrymander and replaced with a nonpartisan map. Since then, worked over with the Princeton Gerrymandering Project, setting up some data collection efforts to try and make it easier for other people to have nonpartisan success, making the data available, and some similar efforts elsewhere. And I now am the executive director of the Nonpartisan Redistricting Data Hub. So continuing a similar sort of project of, again, it's one of the big obstacles to access and participation has just been having the data and knowing what to do with it. And we've been trying to make sure that many more people can participate and spot gerrymanders, but also and stop them, but also actively participate on the community of interest side or in submitting their own maps. So very, very happy to be working with all of you and supporting nonpartisan redistricting here.
Great. Thank you, John. Next, I'll turn it over to Willie.
Hi, my name is Willie Desmond. I'm part of the mapping team, working primarily with Haystack. Very excited to be here today, and it's a pleasure to meet all of you. Looking very much forward to this project. In 2011, I helped the Arizona Independent Redistricting Commission, serving as the lead mapping drawing consultant, helping to create the district plans that have been in place there for the past decade. Just speaking from a personal background, my work with that Independent Redistricting Commission is some of the things that I'm most proud of in my career. And I think these types of projects and these types of opportunities are just amazing. And it's been continually impressive, the dedication of the commissioners and the members of the public that are so active and integral to these. So really looking forward to be part of this team, and it's great to meet all of you.
Thank you, Willie. We'll turn it over to Brad next.
Hi, I'm Brad Winnicky. I'm a senior vice president with Haystack. So my redistricting experience, I worked behind the scenes in a support role with the Arizona Independent Redistricting Commission last cycle. And then I was the primary map drawer for the Fair Districts project in Florida in 2011. I've also done a couple stints living in LA County and got my master's degree from UCLA there.
All right, so we know who Brad's cheering for in the Final Four. All right, next, Guanqing.
Go Stanford.
Hi, my name is Guan Chen Li. Been working with Karen and Q2 over the previous redistricting cycle, before, during, after. So as a day job, myself, I work as an IT infrastructure data scientist at UC Berkeley College of Engineering since 2013. And before that, I worked with Karen at the statewide database from 2009 to 13. Been in charge of security, permission control, and of this database infrastructures. Thank you.
Thank you. Adriana.
Hi, good morning. My name is Adriana. I'm a data analyst with Haystack DNA. I have not been through a redistricting cycle before, but before coming to Haystack, I was a fellow at MGGG, which is a redistricting research group out of Tufts. And currently, I'm also working for the Nonpartisan Redistricting Data Hub with John. And I'm from Auburn, California. Excited to work with you all.
Great. And I don't see Sue, but there will be lots of opportunities. And just correct, Sue, you're not on? All right. All right. Well, will be other opportunities. Obviously, Jamie and Sue send their best, and they will be part of the team as well. So, yeah.
Andrew, perhaps I can just say a couple of words about Sue, since she couldn't come on for whatever reason. So Sue is the former clerk, assessor, recorder, and registrar of voters for Mendocino County, and she has served in multiple positions with the California Association of Clerks and Elections Officials. I believe her most recent appointment there was vice president. She's also served as treasurer and so forth. Sue's worked with us at Q2 over the last at least 10 years. Where we did numerous very data intensive projects with them. And we're really, really happy that Sue could join us, because she also has redistricting experience, believing it or not. And she worked on the last redistricting commission with Mendocino County. So that's Sue, and hopefully you will get to meet her very soon. Thank you.
Great. At this point, we're going to release the team. Karen and I will stay on, but thank you, everyone, for just stopping by and making those introductions. just going forward, what we are looking to talk about today, and as I said, if there's any questions that come up during this presentation, as I said, we have sort of outlined what we wanted to talk about today. And part of this is what we're going to talk about is what we're going to be talking about in the future. And there's a lot of different steps here that we're going to be working with you on. So the first thing is the public meeting, input meetings, when, and just want to talk about those and how we're scheduling them, locations, our role sort of in them. Next, we want to talk about a little bit more in depth with the data management. We know that you have a specific data management a team that's going to be working with you. There's going to be a lot of public input. We want to be making sure that we have access to that input just as you do as well, so that those comments, as directed by you, are incorporated into the maps. Next, just want to talk about the extended calendar and scheduling. You're well aware of the various census delays, but just wanted to talk about what we sort of foresee as sort of next steps in this process and how we're working together. And then legal compliance, just talking a little bit more about what we see as our role working with the legal team that I know that you're on the verge of hiring. So working closely with them to make sure, especially in VRA seats, because those are going to be driving a lot of what we do for the mapping and on the mapping side. So making sure that we're discussing that, and then actual drawing the lines, and just wanted to discuss and how this is going to be done. Obviously, there's going to be some of this, a chunk of it going to be in live, but there's not all of it's going to be in live. And we'll talk about those situations because transparency is very important. But there's going to be situations, and a good example that just comes to the top of my head is in like Arizona, where the commission we worked with last time, they would come to us and they'd say, could you do a version of 2 maps on the border with Mexico versus 3 maps, because they were hearing a lot of public input, how they felt if they had a third congressional seat on the border, that they would have more say on border issues. So they asked us to do that. So and that's a good example of a situation where we didn't do that in live, but we went off and did that, and came back and presented options of what it could look like with 2 or 3 maps. And then and what else is missing? What do we what do we collectively want to work on with the subcommittees? What we want to work on with the whole commission? So we have wanted to talk to you about that a little bit. So 10 years ago, Karen, I asked her about the process, how it was going, how it went last time, and she mentioned, we're in a much better shape. They were selected on March 19th, and then and their first public hearing was on April 9th. And as all you saw with the contracting, getting the contract in place and finally finalized, that doesn't happen overnight. So it was a very rushed process to jump into it. So I think I look at this as we're in really good shape in terms of where we are as a commission, in terms of there can be planning, to avoid any, rushing through the process. So we will talk a little bit more about that. So the public planning, the public input meetings. Obviously, this is going to be a big part of the commission. And the big thing is we want to be able to make sure that we're helping in any way possible. Some of those decision points may include scheduling. Where are we going to be scheduling these, and how are they going to be happening? Excuse me. In terms of both time of day of week, that we we're we're here to help, facilitate what's best for what the commission decides. Location is going to be another key thing of where we're going to be going around the state, and having this, and I think this sort of weaves into the next one about format. Right now, everything's virtual. Is there going to come a time where some of the meetings are going to be in person? Will there be a hybrid of, some people are virtual, some people are in person? We want to walk through that and what that means to the commission, and how we are supporting you. I think if this was all in person, then and if we're going into a particular location somewhere in the state, and you're more likely to hear comments, public input from that particular part of the state. Being virtual, while we could have a focus on a particular area, whether it be San Francisco or San Diego, but anybody from in between, or any other city in the state or location in the state could come into those meetings and weigh in. That obviously is welcome. You want to welcome all public comment, but I think we just want to talk about a little bit more how we work that into what we're doing, in terms of our, what our role is, and in making sure that we're providing you with the necessary information. And that goes into the line drawer role. There are going to be opportunities where, with the COI tool, that people are going to be coming in, and if they are saying, I would like to talk about my particular map that's up in the COI tool, that is something that we're ready, and we can have be able to pull up. So if somebody's going to talk about a particular community of interest, and the commissioners are there viewing this, being able to have that pulled up would be really nice. I think that gives you a real-time sense of, as the person's talking about it and talking about the map, that's going to be better for all of you to see in real time what's going on. And I think a couple other of these issues of mitigation of digital and language access. So, having a system in place that if somebody needs an interpreter, that we have that available when necessary, and make sure that we're working with you to address all these issues ahead of time. And that's where we talked about in our plan, sort of having an appointment system, and that geography identification is something that we would love to work with you and setting that up, to make this process smoother for all of you, as you move forward. So once we sort of address those issues, I think that's when we're going to aiming to have a dry run. And just do what will look like for all of our processes. So when we actually are live and going out, and having the public input meetings, that we're ready for it, that there's no hiccups. I'm knock on wood that there's no hiccups. Obviously, there will always be hiccups, but if the more we can minimize them ahead of time, I think that's something that we're trying to achieve, to make the process go smoother. And then, of course, collaborating with whatever the video is going to be showing, so that if a member of the public is coming to talk about their community of interest, can we have working with the videographer on is there that opportunity to pull up the map that they're talking about and seeing them at the same time. So just things like that we're going to be working through with them. On the next slide, it's largely talking about sort of the data management. It's critical for us to be involved, and we look forward to playing a big role with the team that the commission has hired on the data management. So we will be involved. The line drawers will be involved in some of this conversation. The staff will be involved. And then others, obviously the commissioners, subcommittees will be involved, but we want to make sure, this is one of the things we wanted to bring to you today that we're thinking about, and we want to address and sort of tackle, as we get into this, that we're coming up with what makes the most sense. So some of these other things, efficiencies and public input hearings, making sure that the data is available to us, to each of the commissioners, in a timely manner. There may be somebody who's talking presenting at a public hearing, and if one of you want to make sure that you're like, oh, this issue was brought up, making sure that data is available to you is going to be something that we will help coordinate with the data management team and make sure that that's available to you. How, where, when the commission needs access to data, which data needs to be analyzed or processed. There's going to be a lot of data. As we noted, there was over 40,000 submissions last time. I think, jumping ahead, how to code this public input data, that's a very critical thing to make sure that it's available. 40,000 comments is great, but sorting through them and jumping around is going to be tricky. We worked in Arizona last time. We worked very closely with the commission staff and the commissioners to come up with a coding system that they were able to go look up comments, and we worked with the legal team as well, because the legal team wanted to make sure that this data was available for any pending litigation, that they had it at their fingertips, and that it was documented in such a way that if they got to litigation and they were asked, they were able to point to it. So that's something that we worked very hard on to make sure that the system that we set up made a lot of sense to everybody that would be using it. Then a couple other things that we have, public input, how public input would be coded. That's, just making sure that as data comes in that we're coding it. And there's going to be some trial and error there. And, what we start off in the beginning, we may have a sense of, may look good in the first couple batches of data that comes in, but as more public comments come in, there may be tweaks. So we want to make sure that we're not cemented into a particular system, that there's no flexibility, because we want to make sure that we're working with all the players involved to make sure that the data is accessible to each of you. So if there's times where you want to go in and look this up, that you have it. So, and then finally, more access to the mapping software means more maps will be submitted. The COI tool will allow, which I think, was, just based on our experience, in Arizona in 2011, we had not 40,000, we only had 10,000, but that's a lot of feedback and that's a lot of comments. And one thing that I felt the commissioners were hampered with then, where you would hear somebody describing a community of interest, but being able to visualize it, I think, is very, very important. I think the COI tool that's been developed is something I'm super happy that you're promoting it on the website, but we should be pushing. We want to help push that and talk about that as much as possible, because one, it's personally playing around and using it, it's easy to use. It allows somebody to say, this is my community of interest, and allows them to quickly describe that. So, the more that we connect that actual map to a verbal description, I think is going to help everybody visualize that a little bit better. And then streamline data access. That's sort of going to be a running theme throughout this, is making sure that the data that that you guys have, or that we're pulling together, is going to be streamlined in such a way that there's no hiccups, that we get it to you as soon as possible. But that's going to involve a lot of coordination up front. So if a hearing happens, that there's a reasonable expectation of when feedback from that public meeting, public input meeting, how soon afterwards can we get that available, so it's available to all of you. So those are a couple of the things on the data that that we wanted to bring to your attention and have a further conversation today. Next, I'm going to turn it over to Karen to discuss the timing.
Thank you so much, Andrew, and hello again, commissioners. Thank you very much for having us. I'm going to caveat my part of this presentation by saying that my internet provider has just presented me with an outage, so I'm actually streaming over cell phone data, and if there is a connection problem, then Andrew will be able to take over. So on this next slide, these then and now slide, I again wanted to go back to this point that Andrew raised earlier, which is that from a line drawer perspective, the last process was incredibly rushed. We had census data released before the line drawers were selected, and there were just 3 weeks between consultant selection and the first input hearing. And I'm telling you all of this because there is more time in the calendar. I know everybody's looking at the calendar now and going, gosh, we have such little time to do these things. But compared to last time, we actually have a lot of time, in particular leading up to the release of the data. Last time, the redistricting database was actually released at the same week that the input hearings began, and then we only had 2 months from the last input hearings to publishing the final maps. So no matter how you look at the calendar, I think we can all be just sure that we have more time, which means that we can spend that time planning and implementing a really good process. So how do we use that extra time? Next slide, please, Andrew. So how do we use that extra time? Before the database is released, there are a number of different things that can be done. And of course, you have already started to engage in some of these. And most importantly, education and outreach. Public input has already begun and will be ongoing throughout the process. And one thing that perhaps we haven't really talked about is that the CRC could start to give some preliminary direction. For example, if you hear particularly about a particularly salient community of interest, or a particular topic is brought to your attention and you feel like you want to make a preliminary decision on something, you could give us, the line drawing team, some notes on that already, so that these notes can then be available to you, and we can incorporate those as preliminary key decision points and preliminary key communities of interest that, if it's possible, you would like to preserve. Now, I should say on that same note that it is, if it does become difficult, if you start making directions before we can actually start working with the maps and the data, and you say, okay, we want a hard line at a particular geography, or we heard about this particular area and we absolutely 100% want to make sure that this stays intact, or that this particular line can't be crossed. I think you always want to caveat that and say, if it's at all possible, we want to do that, because hard lines essentially will start driving your map in directions that are perhaps not anticipated until you see the entire map and you have heard from everybody and you've seen the implications of that. Also, because there is time and because we have some data that are already released, you are of course already working with on hiring voting rights counsel and presumably there will be an RPV analyst online and working with you sometime soon. You can start conducting an RPV analysis, and that is going to help tremendously because California, in shorthand, we say it's a voting rights state. We have a lot of areas that could potentially be Section 2 districts and that need to be analyzed. And if you can get that done before the data are released to at least some extent, that's going to be enormously helpful and just save you so much time. Again, thinking about that last slide, we were so rushed and so many things were really done much after they should have been done. And that was just really driven by, administrative concerns or obstacles or, and the timeline. Like, for example, we did not have an RPV analysis done by the time we drew the first draft maps. So imagine that. Imagine drawing the entire state of California when you don't really know where you should be keeping Section 2 districts intact or drawing them. So, of course, those draft maps didn't look all that great. Then visualizations. That was one of our favorite terms the last time. For this time, because we now have this legacy data set, this little present that the census has given us, we could potentially use the legacy data set once it's processed to start doing some of these visualizations, perhaps looking at some of these preliminary communities of interest in context, and then also contextualizing some of these Section 2 districts. So there is definitely some work that can be done before the database, the official database, is released, and we're looking forward to working with you on all of that. And again, as Andrew said, these are some suggestions that came to mind when Commissioner Anderson said, introduce yourselves and present what some aspects of the plan perhaps, and Commissioner Sadwani also weighed in on this. And so we kind of picked out some of the things that we felt like we should be discussing right now. Obviously, there's so much work and there are so many other things that need to be discussed. And you're, of course, talking about some of these things already, but it seems like public input meetings and kind of talking about what can be done before the database is released are some pretty good topics for today, perhaps for your consideration. Then after the database is released, there are other topics that can be explored with some of the extra time. Again, I know it doesn't sound like a lot of extra time, but compared to last time, it really is. There are some other things that can be explored. For example, how do we deal with public input that is released late in the process? Should we come up with some timelines, for example, to submit full or partial map proposals? And I would argue that it's good to think about these things now, because if we can get a schedule going, everybody who wants to participate can know what that schedule is. And of course we can make adjustments, but and we'll probably have to make some adjustments, but it's good to have a timeline so that people can orient themselves, and that's just going to aid public input, and it's going to be enormously helpful for all of the groups that are working to pull communities together to perhaps do unity mapping and so forth. Then draft maps. How many do you want to do, and when do you want to have them out there? I think we put into our proposal that you might consider spending a lot of time on your draft maps so that you get a good set of draft maps out, and not, it's something that is very, very preliminary that essentially then doesn't look anything like the final outcome. So perhaps, thinking about that, does that make sense? And then at what point do you want to put them out? And then how many sets of draft maps? Does it make sense to have one set of draft maps that is really well developed, and then, of course, in public, you keep working on those draft maps to turn them into the final product? Or how do you want to do that? And then, no matter which way you look at the schedule, there are going to be some holidays involved. And it is also, again, very important, I think, considering, how many different holidays there are coming up in November, December, and so forth. to make sure that we have a schedule early so that people can align themselves and plan accordingly. And that, of course, is important for the commission itself also. Next slide, please, Andrew. So following the law, what can be done early? Again, we could start talking about some of the criteria and how they will be implemented. And again, this can be done before the data are released. We could start, once you have council, of course, on board, we could start talking about acceptable population deviations and so forth. And I don't want to get too much ahead of myself here, because I think it's very important to have VRA council in the room for some of these discussions. But again, you can either have these conversations before you get the data or after, but after you get the data, you will have a lot on your plate already. So as much as we can front load some of these conversations, I think as much the calendar is going to open up for line drawing later. Then, of course, VRA compliance, potential majority minority districts could already be identified. And then, you might want to have conversations about the role of coalition districts. There are former Section 5 jurisdictions. I gather that you've had some presentations about and some ideas how some of the council and the attorneys that have presented to you that wanted to be your VRA council, how they had some ideas about how to treat them and whether to treat them differently. And then, of course, the use of electoral data. What is the degree to which you are comfortable using perhaps voter registration in your map drawing, and is that limited to VRA compliance or what? And again, once you have council on board, we're very happy to work with you on this. And these are just some of the decision points I think that can be front loaded a little bit to open up the calendar later, and to also give people an idea when they want to participate how you view the process. Then how do we work during the Voting Rights Act assessment process? There are again some decisions to be made about what can be kept in the public in the spirit of transparency. I know you've heard from some of the former commissioners that they thought there could have been more public access to some of this, but you have to decide that with council, of course. And again, these are decisions that can be made pretty early. And then again, what needs to be confidential to protect against litigation. And the conversation always needs to be how to ensure that the commissioners stay in charge of the process and it doesn't get, staff or consultants don't get in the way of that decision-making process. When it comes to creating the maps, I think it's pretty inevitable that we'll have to prioritize based on legal flexibility or inflexibility. And again, these are conversations that need to happen and should happen pretty soon, most likely. So obviously, if your second criterion is compliance with federal law, with the Voting Rights Act, so that means that you don't have a whole lot of flexibility when it comes to those districts. But when you're looking at implementing the district, there is probably not just one way to draw a Section 2 district. There may be different options. So again, in some areas you may be more flexible, in others a little bit less flexible, and the prioritization of how the process flows kind of stems from that. The regional line drawer approach, I know that some of you have looked at this. This is our internal approach to manage this project, to make sure that you always have an expert in a particular area, somebody who really focuses on that particular area, and somebody who takes responsibility for understanding what the public input is and what's been submitted for that area. California and redistricting California, it's an enormously complex undertaking. There is just, Andrew was talking about your anticipated, 40,000 input points. That's a lot of input. And, dividing that up and creating experts for particular regions that can focus on, the VRA implementation, for example, for Los Angeles and so forth, is really it is an important thing. We looked at this very closely. We came up with this based on, workload and our understanding of what we believe are going to be pressure points. And so that's the regional line drawer approach. Those regions are not going to affect your districts at all. So they don't have anything to do with where the lines actually go. It is really just an internal management of the project, and to make sure that you have, partners on our team that you can reach out to at any time, and that will have a considerable level of expertise in those areas. Training, of course, is a big deal, and I heard through the grapevine that we will be having a training very soon, and we're looking forward to that. And I think it's the 17th of April, and of course that needs to be planned in advance. What do we do? How long is it? And then from our end, who is present? And just to reiterate, we're implementers. We will help you plan. We will help you with whatever you need, but you are the decision makers. And of course, providing a lot of training opens up the conversation, and it gives you an ability to ask questions, and that helps you to really remain in charge of the project and direct and control the process. Finally, on developing maps, Andrew mentioned this already, how much of that is live, what can be done live. Some things will inevitably not happen live unless you want to extend the process by a couple of years, because live map drawing does take a little bit longer. But I think some things will absolutely be 100% live. And I think some of the things that fall into that category is, for example, once you're working with draft maps and you're adjusting draft maps, things like that is obviously a live process. But there may be some areas or sometimes, like Andrew described, where you say, hey, we need a few options for this particular area. Can you guys see what's possible? And then, perhaps working with the subcommittee, the line drawing team will figure that out and then come to the full committee, explain exactly, what was done, and show that and present it. And then the full commission can make decisions about whether they want to explore one or another scenario, live and in public, and pay more attention to that. So just a final note, the full commission only obviously meets on so many days. And for us, it will be very, very helpful to understand, who will be assigned to take the lead on some of the key issues, identifying future training needs so that we can be prepared, deliverables for input hearings, what is expected of us, when will we show up, what do we have available, and so forth. The interaction with the data management team, then coordination with council, of course. And I know you have all thought about this already, but now that we are also in the room, we're looking forward to having these conversations with you and really have the opportunity for us to come up to speed on your thinking. Also integrating recommendations into the CRC calendar, the technical aspects of actual line drawing, there's lots of them. Clarifying commission direction between meetings for each region. So who is responsible for that? Who is our partner? And then, there's always probably some contract management issues, and which subcommittee is responsible for that. And I know we're throwing a lot of things at you right now. Almost all of them you've thought about. Now we're in the implementation stages, so it's good to, kind of go over them a little bit more and perhaps start to organize ourselves so that we can, get to an efficient and comprehensively well implemented project for you. So thank you very much for your time. Andrew, I think we're at the last slide. We look forward to working with you, and we're available for questions. And thanks again.
Commissioner Turner?
Yes, first of all, I'd like to say to both of you, thank you so much for the very, very helpful presentation, bringing a lot of clarity already. The question I had was, so I saw that Tamina, I think, is going to represent the San Francisco Bay Area. I was curious as to John, Willie, and Brad, which areas they were representing.
Yeah, I think that is something that, you know, Brad, with being in Southern California, I think that that's something that we're looking to have him be there. Jamie has, we're looking to have Jamie, given her experience last time, I think, cover LA County specifically. And then, you know, Willie sort of the central northern part. And that's sort of the plan right now. So we may piece them in different spots as we sort of get more direction from you, Commissioner Turner, and the rest of the commission in terms of what is needed. But that's sort of the team that we wanted to present today. And then part of this has to do also with, quite frankly, like travel and whether or not meetings are virtual or not. You know, a couple of members of the team have young children and just not vaccinated yet, so we're going to play that by ear. But you know, so we don't have a final who's exactly where right now, but that's sort of our initial plan. But maybe rotating people in, but we will have that settled as we get into the next few weeks once we get the schedule a little bit more aligned.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. And just to add, I think we have two of the line drawers are assigned, and Tamina will be taking on the Bay Area, which is the area that she did work in last time. And we've assigned Jamie to Los Angeles because Jamie has tremendous experience on voting rights implementation and so forth. She actually had a different region last time. She had a lot of the Section 5 areas, but those two are pretty much set, and we will keep you posted, of course. So thank you.
Commissioner Sinai.
Thank you. This is so exciting, and I feel like we're taking that big step into getting a lot of stuff that's in our heads down on paper and making it a reality. And I officially wanted to invite you to any of our design meetings that we're having. We do have a public input design sessions. We are taking it slow on purpose because we're trying to work really hard to get us all on the same page on a lot of the questions that you asked, just starting with legal parameters and a lot of those pieces. But officially, as I said, we can share, you know, what we're doing at each session and see when you want to come in. But hopefully, April 14th for definitely. We were already planning on you being there, but we want to do this as collaboratively as possible with staff, the different subcommittees, and so we created this design. I call it a working group because it's about rolling up our sleeves. So we look forward to working with you. I had one quick question. When we talked about data, and maybe this is something that just needs a longer conversation later, we talked about how to streamline data and how quickly we could get it from the community input, you know, to you all, to us. But there's a piece that was missing, I felt, which was to the public. I know the public wants access to as much of this data as possible. So I wanted to know if you could speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, I can take that, Andrew, if that's okay with you. I think, of course, it has to be made available at the same time. I think once we have these data processed, then by the time it goes to the line drawer, it's also available for the public. You know, it's probably actually available to the public before, because I'm assuming that the line drawing team will need to have particular access to pull pieces of information as needed very quickly in a public meeting. So I would say that all of these items are available to the public before they're actually in a format that the line drawer would be able to access them. that these pieces of information are made available pretty much instantaneously as they come in. But again, so first of all, thank you very much for the invitation to this subcommittee working group. That sounds fantastic. We'll be there and looking forward to it. And these are exactly the kinds of things that we need to figure out. It's like how is the information flowing, you know, and to make sure that that is in a timely fashion. And that's why everybody needs to be in the room. So so it's a great idea to do this. And thank you.
Commissioner Forniciari.
Yes, just to follow up on Commissioner Sinai's comments, thank you so much, and we look forward to having you join us on the 14th. We're just also trying to hijack the meeting on the 20th if we don't need it for a business meeting for the subcommittee too, because we're really trying to just finalize what we think the design looks like for at least the public input meetings and begin to get those scheduled as at least the early ones as soon as we can. And we really look forward to your thoughtful participation in that. I also want to say thank you so much for bringing up, you know, a lot of the questions that we need to resolve. You know, they've all been rattling around in our minds. I think we've discussed them a little bit, but there are a lot of questions that this commission needs to come to grips with, and we look forward to partnering with you to ensure that we identify all the issues that we need to address and help us with the conversations around addressing those issues. So thank you.
Thank you very much, and the Commissioner. And one of the other things we will be sure to share the presentation so you see all the questions, and I'm sure that will prompt more questions. So look forward to working with you and being at the meeting on the 14th and possibly the 20th as well.
Commissioner Anderson.
Thank you both very much for a very thorough presentation and for giving us all this valuable information. Basically, as my fellow commissioners have said, you know, you put all the questions out there, and then you emphasize that now we as the commission have to make these decisions. And it's really helps because it, as Commissioner Sinai said, it pushes us forward. We invest to address all these issues. And one thing I really appreciate the way you keep on referring to the public needs to be involved. We have to make decisions. You are helping us. You're being the consultant. And the one item I did want to bring up, the areas, the regional approach. This is a great idea, but please don't consider that those zones are set. You know, that might, you know, as the Legal Affairs Committee gets more involved and the VRA analysis looks at things, those zones might shift. But it is a still very helpful idea to consider how we can work. And until you visualize it like that, it's very hard because there's an idea and you think, oh, well, I like that. I don't like that. And you just don't understand that until all the questions are out or all the visualizations are out. And so I really appreciate the detail here and also the enthusiasm. Rather than being daunting, you always present it such that you're inviting us. And we all, you know, you can see everyone wants to get, they're all seeing how their subcommittees are getting involved. So this is absolutely perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Anderson. Commissioner Ahmed.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you both for this wonderful presentation. It was really exciting for me to hear everything that you all shared. I had a specific question for Andrew, and I totally understand if this is a longer conversation, but from a very high level perspective, you mentioned that you all had a data management system in place in Arizona. Would you be able to inform us a little bit about what that looked like?
Yeah, and I don't want to step on toes of what you may be planning, but I'd happy to talk about what it looked like in Arizona. They did have, we worked very closely with the commission and the legal team, and I think it was the legal team that felt that it was very important that they had access to the data that it was searchable. So if they needed to look up anybody's, if there was comments on VRA districts, if there was comments about certain parts of the criteria, if they wanted to pull up certain comments on communities of interest, that was a searchable database. So they did have a database that they eventually, I think they interviewed a couple different systems, and that was something that they decided on, and it was a system called Catalyst, which is a legal database. And I think they're based in California, if I'm not mistaken. So we worked with the Catalyst team and the staff throughout the process to come up with something of like, all right, a comment comes in, one, how did this comment come in? Was it in a public meeting? Was it in a during public comment period in one of your sessions, your regular meeting sessions? Did it come in by email? Did it come in by, so that was like first step was to categorize how the data came in. Secondly, it was we looked at it and we came up with a criteria of like, is this, and they were very focused on in Arizona, they were very focused on the 6 criteria for Proposition 106, which guides the commission. Which one of the 6 criteria, or was it something else? So we were able to categorize everything. So we saw everything that had to do with communities of, like, we could quickly pull that up and we see how many comments, or was it on competitiveness, or one of the criteria that they felt most important to. So we worked with them to come up, and then we had a between the staff, we worked closely with the staff who were doing a lot of categorization, and there's a system in place where most comments I think were pretty clear cut and it fell into one of the categories, but there were some comments that fell into multiple categories. So we had flexibility, so it could be a VRA issue and a community of interest issue. So we worked with them on that. And then finally and I think there was times where if there was a question of like, where does this fall? Like, we didn't have a place, so any single person was making the decision. That a couple people weighed in and reviewed it. So it was clear to everybody that was involved. So it was a system that we sort of built as we were going through the process. I think we had started public input meetings in Arizona when then we said this is becoming a beast. And one of the things that we had done as the line drawers, being part of the public input meetings, we were just simply keeping track of all the comments, who said them, where were they from, in a spreadsheet, that an Excel spreadsheet, and that we would turn around, clean up, look at the transcripts, match names, and make sure that we weren't missing anything. So we had a system on the line drawer that we helped with, that we were able to share with the commission, with the commissioners within a few days after the transcripts came out. We had a process that was in place that was not in real time, but within a few days after a meeting, we said, all right, here's all the comments that public comments that came in at this meeting. And by the way, last week, here are all the comments that came in via email, mail, etc. So that's a quick overview, and very happy to take this offline and talk about that a little bit more.
Thank you so much. That was extremely helpful.
Yeah.
2 thoughts on my part. One, and I've actually already put this on my list to be discussed next year during lessons learned, but some thoughts on information sharing with local redistricting efforts. And when I say sharing, I'm thinking about information flows in both ways. Are there things that we can or should provide or be prepared to provide to local redistricting efforts? Are there things that we might want from local redistricting efforts? And just any thoughts you have on that. Second of all, and it's perhaps early to be raining on this parade, but this is what I've had to do in the many elections I've been involved in over the last 20 or 30 years. And that is to say, holidays are nice, they're there on the calendar, but when you have a hard deadline, you don't always get to do things at the holidays that you'd like to be able to do. So I just, everybody has to be aware that the hard deadlines are the hard deadlines, and we'll do the best we can to enable people to enjoy the holidays, but sometimes it might not be possible, or it might be possible only in a very limited way. So just to put that out on the table.
Well, we'll look forward to spending our holidays with you.
And
Thank you.
yeah, in terms of Karen, I'll go first regarding the information flow. I'm we're a big data company, and we always appreciate data flowing back and forth with other partners that we have worked with over the years. So I think in terms of the local efforts, making them aware of our data collection, I think is something that makes sense, and sharing and gleaning, local, if there's a community that has multiple meetings and we as a commission are only going next door to that community, if there's information that can be shared with us, I think that's something that we would work with the data management team of how best can that be shared, because if there's a very strong local group, or groups talking at the local level about a community of interest, I think that benefits the larger statewide commission knowing about that. So I don't have an immediate how it would work, but I think that's something that should be addressed. And I agree, if there's easy ways to share that, then or difficult ways, how do we make it easier to share between us and local efforts?
Right. Karen, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, sure. I think this is something we can talk about probably at one of the subcommittees. I think, there's a lot of redistricting efforts that are going to be happening at the same time. So it might get a little overwhelming. I think it will get a little overwhelming. I think one of our challenges is going to be to let people know, what level we're drawing districts on. I've had this conversation already about 80 times in the last month with, just people on the local level that just wanted some information. And it's like, okay, the state commission is responsible for these particular districts. And if you participate there, that doesn't mean that your local school board district is going to be affected. So I think there's a lot of clarification and, again, education that needs to happen. And yeah, we, of course, can collaborate. I like the idea of perhaps, seeing if there are some local meetings going on, perhaps do an outreach at those meetings, letting people know the state commission is going to be hosting a meeting focusing on this particular area. So, now that you know something about redistricting or you're interested in redistricting, please just participate there also or consider it. I think there are things that can be done. And yeah, let's talk about it in a subcommittee.
Yeah, and I would say that the distinction between the local redistricting efforts and the statewide redistricting effort is one of the major points of focus and emphasis in the California Redistricting Basics presentation that we are busy delivering around the state. And I would encourage colleagues to always devote the time necessary to ensure that audiences understand that distinction. I have Commissioner Fernandez next, followed by Commissioner Sinan.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Andrew and Karen. Wonderful presentation. I think I took your comment regarding the holidays, not necessarily the commissioner's time or your time, but it was more for public input. I think that's what you were thinking of in terms of how it could negatively impact us in that sense. But I agree with Chair Kennedy. It's like, we're going to be here during the holidays, and that's fine. That's what we signed up for. It's only once every 10 years. So we want to make sure we do it right. The other question I actually had, I believe it was John. He was the one that was saying that he's kind of the gerrymandering expert. So would he also be the expert in terms of trying to see if there's like duplicate POI inputs? Because sometimes, people might submit something in writing. They might actually submit the same thing 2 or 3 times. So I wasn't sure if that was part of what you would be looking for as well and helping us with.
I think that's an interesting question, and that's something again driven by the commissioners. That's something that we could explore and work with data management, and and I think that's something we if there's a concern about multiple submissions, is there a way that we could flag that to say, just so you guys are aware, the same comment came from this one individual 50 times, or this same comment came from 50 individuals. There may be ways to flag that to just address that. But I think that's a discussion on, especially with the data management to see if they have ideas of how that can be flagged. But yeah, something that we are aware of and can definitely give some input and thoughts on.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that, if I may. We should probably make sure that people understand it's really kind of anti-gerrymandering expert, not really a gerrymandering expert, because even though he worked with the MGGG and people call themselves like the gerrymandering projects, they actually are all working to get rid of gerrymandering. So I just wanted to be clear about that for the record.
Perfect. Thank you. Commissioner Sanat.
Thank you. I just wanted to go back to the comment that Commissioner Kennedy made, and I was in the camp that let's share all information as much as possible locally. But in talking to some of the redistricting advocacy groups, they kind of explained why that doesn't always work well, and that some people may not want it sent that way. And so one of the recommendations for lesson learned, well, we talked about this when we were creating the COI tool, the community of interest tool, was when they get the email that kind of gives them their maps and the PDF to say you can share it locally, but also creating kind of a checkbox for next time for 2030 where it says, do you want us to share this with your local redistricting efforts? And so I think it is fair to I think it is a good conversation to have, just so we understand why we may not want to share it versus the other one. So I just wanted to share that piece of it.
Yeah. And thank you so much, Commissioner Sinai. I'm sorry, did I just interrupt someone? I apologize if I did.
You're good.
Okay, thank you. Yes, communities of interest. I didn't want to go into a long, I wasn't sure whether you wanted to have a long conversation, but you are absolutely right. And communities of interest are different. I mean, if I submit my community of interest to the commission for my assembly district, it's going to be different than the one I will submit for my Senate district, for my local district, most certainly. For the school board, probably different than for the city council. So they are contextual. And so when you're sharing across without, having that conversation about whether it might be applicable, you could inevitably potentially create a lot of confusion and also, perhaps make people pretty unhappy. And so I agree with you. And again, subcommittees are fantastic. We will have more time to explore these issues and really, work on them and see where the commission lands. So thank you for that.
Excellent. Thank you. Commissioner Anderson.
Yeah, one last quick thing on that, along those lines. Commissioner Kutagawa and I have a remote area, which is the on the eastern side of the 395. And we're actually using those COI tools as an attraction to get more people interested in the statewide efforts, because they realize those getting their communities of interest acknowledged and organized helps the local, and then how it fits with the state. And so it's kind of a being how to get more people actually out there. And then you actually go through the differences of, well, your community of interest, you know, in your, it's only the county, can't cross the county line. But many of those do cross county lines, and that's something you're interested in the state level. And so they all of a sudden go, oh, and you get a lot more people involved in some of the more rural areas. So it's just more of a, almost like a advertising tool, sort of, and sharing.
Excellent. Thank you, Commissioner Anderson. Any other questions or comments from commissioners? Any final remarks from our line drawing team?
I would just say, as Karen ended the presentation, we're excited to be here and really look forward to going on this journey with you. And it will be fascinating at times and frustrating at times, but we will make it through.
Yes, ditto that. Thank you so much for having us today and for selecting us. And I'm just really excited about this process. So really looking forward. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you all for being here. Yes, we look forward to working very closely with you through the rest of the year. With that, we are at 10:56. We're a couple of minutes early, but we will break nonetheless until 11:15. At 11:15, the Legal Affairs Committee will continue leading us in discussion regarding the selection of outside litigation counsel and VRA counsel. So thank you all, and see you at 11:15. Welcome back from the morning break. It's 11:15. I would like to turn things over right now to the Legal Affairs Committee to continue leading our discussion on selection of outside litigation counsel and VRA counsel.
Thank you, Chair. I believe 2 of 3 of us are here, Commissioner Toledo and I. Commissioner Sadwani, I believe, is not in this meeting, but we can continue on. We left things with the VRA counsel and litigation counsel decisions. You have the memo that we prepared giving our motion that we passed to recommend retaining Scrum Master Wutcher and Mr. David Becker as VRA counsel, and then also to recommend them as well as litigation co-counsel alongside Gibson Dunn. Since then, we have not met, and so we pick up the discussion right where we left it off. There were several public comments that we've all seen, some suggesting we take a closer look at costs and perhaps delaying engagement with litigation counsel until later. We can start our discussion from there.
Very good. I will kick things off by saying that, you know, both as far as potential litigation that we might be facing and potential litigation that we might want to engage in, particularly in relation to census data, I don't see a reason to delay hiring outside litigation counsel. I see a strong case for very strong monitoring and management of the outside litigation counsel contract. We do need to be careful to contain costs and be reasonable, but I think it behooves us to have outside litigation counsel available to us as soon as possible, along with VRA counsel. Other commissioners? Commissioner Fernandez.
I would agree with Chair Kennedy in terms of, I don't see there's a need to delay hiring the litigation counsel. I do, I guess the only thing I have is the co-counsel, and I just want to make sure that that relationship is delineated appropriately. But other than that, I appreciate all the efforts that you went through and the time you took to go through everything, your thought process, and so I agree with your recommendations, and I support the recommendations. Thank you.
Commissioner Anderson.
Thank you, Chair. I also really agree with the idea that there is no reason not to pursue the litigation counsel right now, because we have been told by essentially all the people who applied that you could indeed be paid at any time, particularly given the census delay. As we've seen, actually current other states have been sued or are suing. So I believe that would be very helpful. I also, though, really do like the emphasis on the cost idea. And I am concerned with the idea of co-counsel because, and I'd like to ensure that co does not mean completely dual co, because therefore you must have one from each firm and all the way through, unless it is divided else in another manner. And I believe that's not usually called co-chair, co-counsel. So I'd like that to be given that I believe there is a legal understanding of co-counsel. I don't feel comfortable with the recommendation the way it stands right now. And I'd like to have that maybe even primary, secondary, have one on full-time and have the other brought in as litigation occurs. So there is one legal group who is giving the advice and is the one voice, and the other is a secondary voice to that primary. And so I'd like that to be pursued more. If we need more information from counsel on that, I'd like that. But I at this point, I'm not comfortable with the co-idea, because I see that as double cost. And I don't understand if I don't know if that could be defined differently as you work out the relationship. And so I prefer saying both, because co, I think, has a legal connotation. So if we'd be having both of them on with the roles to be evaluated in working out the contracts, that's how I'd make a motion even for that at this point. Thank you. And I also, great work bringing up all these ideas and this information for us. And there's a lot of items that we've been considering. And so I really appreciate all the time and effort that the Legal Affairs Committee has put in. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Anderson. I have Commissioner Fernandez, Commissioner Fortichari, and Commissioner Turner.
Yeah, I just want to piggyback off Commissioner Anderson in terms of the co-counsel. I kind of see it how, like with the translation and interpretation contracts, we have multiple contracts. So neither one, it's not a co-contract. It just depends on what the specialty is and maybe the bandwidth. So maybe that's how we approach it, where you may have one that might be your lead, but I do hesitate to call it a co-counsel, as Commissioner Anderson stated. But I do think that we may need two, because it depends on what the specialty is and whether or not one firm can handle whatever the situation is at the time. Thank you.
Commissioner Forestry.
Yeah, I want to start off by thanking the committee for your hard work and your diligence and your extremely thoughtful deliberation on the topic. And I just want to chime in too. I like the idea of two litigation counsels. I think they bring different strengths to the table. And I'd like to see that relationship defined. And maybe even before we decide to go ahead with the vote, I think it's important that we have the expectations in place before we hire these folks, so that everyone is clear and there's no confusion. And I think it's important that we manage the budget, and I'd like to have a little further clarity on exactly how we would be managing the budget with this dual litigation counsel approach.
Thank you, Commissioner Forestry. Commissioner Turner.
Thank you, Chair, to the subcommittee. Again, thank you for the excellent work and the documentation that was provided that makes it really easy to see what the issues are. In the conversation right now in regards to co-counsel, as it relates to budget management, I would love to have more information about the difference it would make. So co-counsel, yes, perhaps duplicative billing, having both counsels in the same space, but even as some other kind of hybrid of that or whatever it's going to look like too, it seems to me from a litigation standpoint, counsels, they would still have to at some point confer with each other, or at least give up-to-date information, which means there still then would be billing for both counsels. And so I'd like to know the associated costs with a change of whether it's co-counsel or whether it's some other configuration. It seems like the monetary elements would still be there, because it's not like they could just specialize in one area and not then confer with the other counsel to know what has been done or to be kept abreast of what's going on. It seems like, or maybe they can, but I'd like to understand what that would look like and how it would benefit us to change the relationship.
Thank you, Commissioner Turner. Commissioner Okutagawa.
I want to echo all of the thanks that have been given to the Legal Affairs Committee for all the great work. The documentation that you provided to us was very helpful in its clarity and just really the pros and cons that you were, as a committee, were weighing. And so it gives me at least confidence in terms of the decisions that we'll be making. I do want to also echo the concerns around defining co-counsel. I particularly liked, I think it was Commissioner Fernandez that said, delineating and defining either by specialty or who has the bandwidth in terms of when someone will be, I guess, taking the lead. And I think that also goes in with what's been raised by several of the commissioners around cost. And I think getting, a clearer understanding of what cost is. I am curious as to whether or not what both of the recommended firms perhaps came in with in terms of assumptions about the work, and whether or not the further refinement of the roles would or could cause one or both, probably one, maybe not both, but one or both to withdraw their proposal to us as a result of the delineation and the clarity that we're seeking. And I say this because there could be implications to the budget that would be available to them if they were thinking co-counsel, as someone had expressed a concern about. if they're thinking that both would be on all meetings at all times, obviously that would increase costs for us, but it would also increase billing hours for both firms. And so if it's one or the other, then that could maybe impact their calculus. And I am curious as to whether or not that's been discussed with them, or if it's something that could be discussed with them, and if that will impact, their continued candidacy for, our council roles. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Kutagala. Commissioner Yee, did you want to respond to those thoughts from colleagues?
For sure. Yes, I'm hearing very clearly the concerns about the co-counsel relationship, how to define that, how to even name it. And especially as it relates to costs and division of labor, for sure, some of the stories we've heard from 2011, some of those painful stories involve large meetings of very expensive lawyers in a room. Some of the overlap meetings when two firms were active at the same time. I think I'd like to defer maybe to Marion for a minute, if she has any comments about such relationships, what to call them, any legal implications involved in what we call them, and how we would proceed with such an arrangement of two firms.
I don't think it's been discussed with either of the firms, but what I would suggest would be separate contracts, one with each of the two law firms, and then written into the contract is that they are to work as directed by the commission. So the commission could decide in each case whether they want to have one or the other or both involved in any particular meeting or case or whatever, so that the commission retains control over the roles of the different law firms at different times.
And what we call such a relationship is any considerations?
You would just have separate contracts that they both are your lawyers to act as directed.
It sounds very much like what Commissioner Fernandez was describing in relation to the language support contracts, simply having two contracts and the commission decides pretty much on an case-by-case basis, an ongoing basis, what assets we deploy, how and where.
So they would each be simply litigation counsel. In my mind, if we do move ahead with Strumasser or Richard Becker for VRA, they would be the natural choice, of course, to lead any litigation on VRA matters. But then any other matters, then we can make a choice.
Commissioner Taylor.
Yes. So I like that rationale that we just thinking of with having two litigation attorneys, because it seems to me in our conversation, we assume that Gibson Dunn is infinite and that they could pick up the capacity where SWB might fall short. Dunn can be the larger company, but they can have their attorneys could be engaged. We could exceed their capacity the same way we could exceed SWB's capacity. So I don't think we should assume that what SWB, where they fall short, Gibson and Dunn can pick up. We could exceed their capacity in the same manner. So I don't think we should always necessarily judge them by capacity, what they can do versus what SWB can do. Maybe if we look at their expertise, but I think judging them on capacity might be a wrong angle, because we could exceed either's capacity if their attorneys are engaged.
Thank you, Commissioner Taylor. Any discussion about another topic we raised, which is Gibson Dunn's public perceptions of Gibson Dunn, them having a history of representing different sides of issues that reflect differing values towards voting rights and such, and how that will color our perceptions of us.
Commissioner Turner.
Only to say that I appreciate, again, your documentation and the letter written asking specifically or sharing the concerns, and I appreciated their quick response and what I thought thorough response is explanation to each of the bulleted items.
One other thought at this point is essentially we would be, or my sense is that we would be authorizing the negotiation of an arrangement, but we might still have the opportunity as a commission to ratify that agreement once it was negotiated. So I'm looking at this as not necessarily the final step in the process. We've all acknowledged that one or the other, or theoretically both firms, might balk at some aspect of this, requiring either further negotiation or going with an alternate. So, you know, I'm not seeing today as our final opportunity to take a look at things. Just want to get a reality check on that. Commissioner Toledo.
I would concur with that assessment. I think there's still quite a bit of negotiation to be done around the scope of work, how the work is to be done, and also fee structure. Because at this point, fee structure is still, especially with the Gibson Dunn firm, would need to be negotiated and as would and aligned with the scope of work that we decide to do. And when they applied, they didn't apply for to be working collaboratively with two firms. So that's a discussion that we need to have, and how the scope of work would need to evolve. So this is work that the subcommittee would need to do over the next couple of weeks in terms of making a more concrete scope of work, working on the procurement process, and negotiating with the firms to make sure that there's alignment in an agreement towards moving in that direction. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Fernandez.
Okay, Commissioners Yi and Toledo, how would I draft that as a motion? You want to help me with that? Or maybe Commissioner Turner has it already, the language.
Commissioner Turner.
Yes, no, not so much the language, but I did want to remind us that in the response from Gibson and Dunn, at least, their first response up at the top saying that they were humbled by the news that they were being recommended as litigation co-counsel. So I think that they see that and know that and could have already determined that they weren't interested. And so it didn't read in their response like that was a problem. And in regards to the fee structure, I appreciated Commissioner Toledo's response in that there will be other opportunities to look at it and get or actually receive the information. I'm still wondering if just from the commissioners here, perhaps Commissioner Toledo or Marion, we talked and lifted a concern about duplicative billing because of the two councils. And I know we're looking at configuration and what have you. I'm still not clear why how we would benefit from a name change or configuration. And even if we assign different entities, if we assign different firms, thank you, if we assign different firms, different cases, it seems like there still would be some crossover information that they would need, and we'd have to either reshare again or they'd have to talk amongst themselves. So it seems like there would be, outside of having two separate firms, some duplicative billing that would take place just because they're both representing the commission around, the issues. And so in my mind, so if someone can just help me with that, it's not, to me, still clear cut. It looks like there still would be opportunity for us to pay two different firms, even if there's a separation of assignment.
Right. Thank you. Marion?
Thank you, Commissioner Turner. I think it would depend on the nature of the litigation. If it were something that were a challenge to the composition of the commission, for example, that might have to involve both law firms in it. On the other hand, if it's something that's a challenge to whether or not you complied with your public transparency requirements, that's something that probably one law firm could handle without any need to involve the other. So I think it has to be done on a case-by-case basis depending on what the nature of the litigation is. And you would have to assess in each case what would be the benefit of having one or the other or both involved in that particular litigation. And it's not unusual for any company to have different attorneys representing them in different matters, depending on their expertise and background and so forth.
Thank you.
And this also, I think, goes to the matter of our chief counsel and the role of our chief counsel in coordinating with outside counsel. It seems to me that our chief counsel and our in-house legal staff could take a lot of the burden as far as the information sharing. Obviously, our chief counsel and legal staff need to be fully aware of what any outside counsel is involved in at any point in time, and can take the lead in sharing any of that needs to be shared with another outside counsel that we have retained. In my mind, we need to make that coordination function a priority when we are looking at candidates for the chief counsel position. We need to ensure that that is, top of mind. But we could save ourselves a good bit of money on duplicative billings if we're managing this carefully and steadily from in-house. Commissioner Toledo.
I would agree with that, and my understanding is that much of the potential overbilling, if we want to call it that, was that multiple attorneys were attending multiple meetings, and perhaps some of the more expensive members of the firm were, as opposed to the junior associates, were attending, and so a part of our role in vendor management and the chief counsel's role in vendor management will be to make sure that we manage who's attending, that it's the appropriate level of individual for the appropriate type of meeting, that we're having the appropriate firm go to the appropriate, attending the appropriate sessions, and collaborating and controlling the meetings that are happening outside of our public meetings as well, so that it's so that we're sticking to our budget ultimately, and not going over budget, and so that will require strong vendor management on the part of the chief counsel, and we'll certainly be working with the administration and finance committee and the legal affairs committee to control costs and ensure that we have adequate legal representation throughout the process. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Anderson.
Yeah, I think this has all been very helpful. The way I sort of always have seen it is the savings is if you have co-counsel, basically both attorneys have to be aware of everything all the time and make all the decisions. Where if it's If it's more on a litigation basis, there's more of a, like the primary might be following everything, but now including our chief counsel, and keeping an eye on, but having one more, who's aware of the VRA, and then as other issues like come up, such as we're being sued about should commissions even exist, that matter could be handled to the other attorney. And there does not need to be, they don't need to be kept up to speed on everything. It's a bit like how we divide subcommittees. Director Alvaro has, Hernandez has to be aware of all the things that are going on, but each subcommittee does not need to know the full details. And that's where the big cost savings is, as I see it, where I think if they were two co-counsels, they must know all the litigation issues about everything all the time. And there's more. But my other concern, though, that I'd like to make sure that the committee then in negotiating all this gives direction is, who do we feel we like the voice of more? Or who do we feel is paying attention to the details, who does the better job of overseeing and handing off things? And because often you can have a great litigator, but you just have to give them the package and say, go, and they are going to go like crazy, but they might not be as good as collecting everything. And that's a style issue, but I think it's a very important distinction. And the Legal Affairs Committee has seen how both all of these teams have presented, and there's a much better read on that. But I think as the commission, those are items kind of like the expertise, also their style, and what do they think and they have better management of. So that's just how I've sort of seen it. I don't know if that helps anyone in evaluating it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Anderson. Commissioner Fornaciari is next, and then we'll come back to Commissioner Yee.
I was going to make a motion, so can we let Commissioner Yee respond?
Yes,
I was about to do the same thing. I would say to Commissioner Anderson's concern, I would think that would depend on the nature of the litigation. Not if we have two litigation counsel, they don't necessarily need to all be in the loop for everything. I mean, they could be two completely separate matters, being pursued, that they could each be separately working on.
If I could suggest procedurally, Chair.
Yes, please.
I would prefer to have separate motions on VRA counsel, and then if you're going to have two litigation counsel, have separate motions on each of those. If there is one choice as VRA counsel, that would enable the negotiations to go forward on getting that established as soon as possible.
Right.
And then you could have both motions on the table and then call for public comment on the whole deal.
Okay. Well, we would essentially have three motions on the table, correct? Right. Okay. So the chair will entertain Commissioner Anderson.
I propose that we accept the committee's recommendation for the VRA attorney of I have S&W.
Stromwasser, Wucher, Becker.
Okay, so we have that motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Commissioner Taylor seconds. And Marion, you're saying that we can have multiple motions before we take public comment?
Correct.
Okay, very good. Commissioner Fernandez.
So I will make a motion to accept the Legal Affairs Committee's recommendation with Stromwasser as our litigation counsel. That's one motion.
And is there a second to that motion?
Sure.
Commissioner Ahmad seconds.
Yes, I second.
Okay, Commissioner Fornaciari.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that the Legal Affairs Committee begin negotiation to have Gibson Dunn be our other litigation counsel.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'd like to add
Yes.
something though too.
Okay.
I would like to request that the legal affairs, and this is not part of my motion, this is just a request for, or it could be, but whatever, you tell me. I'd like to see the legal affairs committee come back with not only having negotiated with what they negotiated with the litigation counsels, but also a definition of the relationship, how they see the relationship, what the role of the chief counsel is going to be, what the role of the subcommittee is going to be, and in an approach for managing costs. I mean, I'd like you guys to come back, with more big picture so we can understand how it's all going to fit together. So that when we approve your negotiated the negotiations, that we have the answers to all those questions, if that makes sense.
It makes.
I like what Commissioner
Okay.
Toledo said and what you guys have said.
Yep.
Right.
And all the questions that you threw out, you got all the right questions. I just, what are the answers? How are we going to do it?
Right.
Right. So my question to you is, would you like to include that in your motion? And secondly, would you like to offer that as a friendly amendment to the two other motions so that we are on the same wavelength with all three motions?
Yes.
Okay, wait. I have a question.
Commissioner Anderson.
I like the idea, but does that apply to my motion for the VRA Council? I'm not sure. Not quite. So should it not be an amendment to mine, but an amendment to the other two?
It's a friendly amendment, so it's up to you whether to accept it or not.
Oh, yeah, I appreciate that, but is it germane? Is it applicable to this?
I think
Well, to the extent that we are looking to have the Legal Affairs Committee negotiate something and bring it back to us for final ratification.
Then I like the friendly amendment.
Then you do? Okay. Commissioner Fornaciari.
I would offer that it also applies in, defining how we're going to manage that relationship with our VRA counsel, not just with the litigation counsel.
Thank you. With that friendly amendment, I amend my motion.
Okay, now, Marion, do we need the seconders also to accept the friendly amendment? Okay.
Yes.
So can you help us sort out who was seconding which motion?
That was a motion by Commissioner Fernandez.
Okay, Commissioner Fernandez.
My question, and the only reason I'm against that right now, is I want to make sure this does not hinder their ability to start the negotiation process, because I don't want it to be another 2 weeks before we move forward with this process. So I just want confirmation with that piece from Commissioners Yee and Polito.
Yeah, I don't perceive any intent to slow any of this down. Commissioner Yee, is that your understanding as well?
Yes, I did. Yeah, it's fine.
Okay, Commissioner Toledo. Okay, so Marion, where are we? And Commissioner Fornaciari?
I don't think anyone seconded my motion.
I'll second it.
Okay. And then Commissioner Ahmad, you had seconded Commissioner Fernandez's motion, I believe.
Yes, I'll second again with the amendment.
Okay, very good. So we have three motions on the floor. One to accept the Legal Affairs Committee's recommendation to retain Strumwasser Wucher plus David Becker as VRA counsel, authorizing the subcommittee to begin negotiations and come back to us with the results of those negotiations. We have a motion to retain Strumwasser Wucher and David Becker as an outside litigation counsel, likewise coming back to the full commission with the results of that initial negotiation, and a third motion to retain Gibson Dunn as outside litigation counsel with proviso that the Legal Affairs Committee come back to the full commission with the results of that negotiation. Commissioner Yee.
Thank you, Commissioner Kennedy. I don't think we're voting on actually retaining them yet, right? We're voting on authorizing the Legal Affairs Committee to negotiate draft agreements. Yeah.
Right. So with that, I will ask Katie to open up for public comment and read the instructions and invite callers in as they join.
Will do. In order to maximize transparency and public participation in our process, the commissioners will be taking public comment by phone. To call in, dial the telephone number provided on the live stream feed. It is 877-853-5247. When prompted, enter a meeting ID number provided on the live stream feed. It is 923-1796-5628. When prompted to enter a participant ID, simply press the pound key. Once you have dialed in, you will be placed in a queue. To indicate you wish to comment, please press star 9 to raise your hand. This will indicate for the moderator you wish to comment. When it is your turn to speak, you will hear a message that says the host would like you to talk and to press star 6 to speak. If you would like to give your name, please state and spell it for the record. You are not required to provide your name to give public comment. Please make sure to mute your computer or live stream audio to prevent any feedback or distortion during your call. Once you are waiting in the queue, be alert for when it is your turn to speak, and again, please turn down the live stream volume. We do have a couple people in the queue. I would like to remind everyone in the queue to press star 9 to raise their hand, indicating they would like to comment. I do have someone with their hand raised at this time, and I will open their line. And the floor is yours.
Hi, can you hear me?
I sure can.
Yes.
Oh, hi, my name is John, John Pirro. I live in the Ahwahnee in California, in Madera County and up in the foothills. And this is my first time I've done this. I just have a couple minutes, right? Or what's the length of the comment?
You have a 2-minute period, sir.
Oh, okay. So anyway, my thrust is this. Since we're in a mountain community and both in Congressional District 4 and Assembly District 5 and the California Senate District 8, we are all of these are pretty much zoned for mountain area communities. And as such, we have a very unique lifestyle. So we have a unique mountain community, much different than the incorporated cities. So my thrust is this. When the redistricting happens, what I would like to do is keep these districts rural, keep them mountainous so that there's commonality so the representative, both the congressional, the assembly, and the state representative for these communities is representing the mountain community and the issues that we have, such as fire and forest management, the culture that we have, which is much different than the cities and the urban areas. And so I would just respectfully ask that as these lines are considered to be redrawn, personally, I'd like things to pretty much stay the way they are, but if they are redrawn somewhat, to please consider keeping these communities with the culture and with the attributes that are in the mountain communities, not part of the urban areas and so forth. So That's pretty much my comment there.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you for your call.
The commissioners are taking public comment on the three motions that are on the floor currently, and we will take more general public comment later on. The people that are in the queue, if you do wish to make a comment, please press *9 to raise your hand. Okay, we have another raised hand. Mm-hmm. And the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Hi, this is Renee Reed. Page 2, paragraph 2 of Gibson Dunn's response letter says they did not believe individual contributions required disclosure. However, it makes clear they understood firm contributions required disclosure. The Commission's report focuses on the disputed individual contributions. However, as I called into the Legal Affairs Committee, the Commission's report is incomplete. It is missing multiple firm contributions, which can easily be found on the California Secretary of State's website and also on Open Secrets. These are firm contributions greater than $2,500 in a year to a California candidate, including $7,300 to Javier Becerra for Attorney General in 2018, $6,800 to Marshall Tuck for Superintendent of Public Instruction in 2014, $5,000 to Howard Berman for Congress in 2011, $5,000 to Kevin McCarthy for Congress in 2013, $5,000 to Eleni Kounalakis for Lieutenant Governor in 2018, $4,700 to Jesse Gabriel for Assembly in 2020, $2,700 to Ted Lieu for Congress in 2016, and apart from the two individual contributions to Kamala Harris in 2016, in 2015, the firm separately contributed $2,700 to Kamala Harris for Senate. These contributions are easily found on the California Secretary of State's website and, yes, Open Secrets. In his letter, Commissioner Yee asked for clarification on state lobbying and two individual contributions. Gibson Dunn was responsive. However, he also offered, quote, "If you wish, you may also provide a description of your firm's overall lobbying and PAC activity." The aforementioned contributions are all missing from the Commission's reports. But by failing to proactively disclose them for a second time, Gibson Dunn clearly declined to take up Commissioner Yee on his generous offer. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. Are there others in the queue, Katie?
Yes, sure. We do have one more with their hand up. The floor is yours.
Yes, Commissioners, this is Renee Westa-Lusk. I'm just wanted some clarification on the two firms that are going to be approached for litigation counsel positions. Are they going to, I was kind of following the discussion as closely as I could, but I didn't understand, are they going to be hired separately to do different types of litigation, or will they be actual co-equals and they'll be following all the litigation?
Thank you, Ms. Westa-Lusk. My understanding, and please, colleagues, correct me if I'm wrong, both would be hired as counsel, and the determination of what each would do would be determined by our chief counsel in consultation with the full commission.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. I support the motions to go ahead and hire. Thank you.
And for those in the queue that have not shared, I would like to say, if you'd like to raise your hand, *9, one last time. Oh, and we do have a raised hand. And the floor is yours.
Hi, Commissioners, and hi, Marion. This is Cynthia Dye calling back in again. Just been listening to your thoughtful discussion. I think you have the right issues under consideration, and glad that you're going to take a little more time to negotiate with the firms and think about them. And I apologize if I missed this in Monday's meeting since I didn't attend. I'm just curious if you have asked the Attorney General's office whether they would be willing to represent you in litigation on any matter. I will say in our experience, the Attorney General was selective, and they did in fact choose to represent us in some matters of litigation. And as I pointed out previously, this was dramatically less expensive than going with outside counsel. That's all I'd like to say.
Thank you, Commissioner Dye. Commissioner Yee, would you like to respond?
That was not part of our discussion on the Legal Affairs Committee. I'm recalling there was some, I can't quote it right now. I believe there was some indication from the AG's office declining something, but I'm not going to remember anything quotable. So let me defer to Marion at this point.
Okay, Marion?
I don't think that either of these motions would preclude the commission from also asking the AG at some point to represent it. That would be a different situation, and you could have the AG represent you in any specific case.
Okay, I would just like to suggest that the Legal Affairs Committee consider a policy that that they always ask the AG first before moving to outside counsel. Just a thought.
Very good.
Thank you for that. And yes, I would concur with Marion that nothing that we are doing at this point would preclude us from approaching the Office of the Attorney General at any point in the future and seeking representation from them.
Okay. I believe that's it, Chair, unless, one more time, I will say, if you would like to raise your hand to comment, please press *9, indicating you wish to comment. Otherwise, Chair, that would be everybody. And it doesn't look like they're raising their hand. So I think we're good to go.
Okay, very good. So then, is there any further discussion, Commissioner Yee?
Just want to mention I am in touch with Commissioner Sadwani. She unfortunately is tied up in another meeting, but I've been keeping her abreast of our discussion, and she is supportive of the motions and has nothing further to add.
Very good, Commissioner Sinai.
Former Commissioner Dye's point, do we want to consider that as part of the third motion or a fourth motion, or just, I don't want it to get lost that we go to the Attorney General?
I would not want it to get lost. I think we're talking more about a recommendation from the Legal Affairs Committee to the full commission, and the full commission will certainly be looking forward to any recommendation in that regard from the Legal Affairs Committee. Marion.
You would not need a contract to work with the Attorney General's office, so that would be in addition to any other contracts that you enter into.
Right. Okay. Commissioner Anderson.
Coming back to the issue of disclosure, it is a big issue. In 2010, those were very, very strict, and those were grounds for not going with different firms. We have been looking at all conflicts and doing it on a case-by-case basis, which is I think a very good way. I like the way our commission is moving forward. I'm just a little concerned about are we setting precedent by doing this? And then moving forward with any other contracts. Any further discussion on that one?
Thank you for the question. Marion or commissioners?
I think it is a matter
Marion.
of policy. It's up to the commission on how they wish to address it.
Chair Marion, what was the first part of what you said? I caught policy, but what was the first part?
Just that how you deal with disclosure issues is something for the commission to decide by itself. It's not really a legal issue. The conflicts are not strictly applicable to your contractors. They are to the extent the commission wishes to make them applicable.
Commissioner Sinai.
Yeah, I understand where the 2010 commission was coming from, and even in some of the analysis of the 2010 commission, both by the commission as well as outside the commission, said that holding themselves to the nonpartisan in contracts actually kind of held them back from making some decisions. I think that might be the wrong word. Up to date, we have been let's know what the political leanings are, but I think it's better to have them overtly told, and we know just like the 14 of us, we know each other's political parties. But it does bother me that they didn't disclose everything, even though they were asked twice. But I don't see that affecting how they're going to represent us. I know it's about perception, but almost every company everywhere gives something to someone, and usually to both sides, because they just want to be quote unquote friends with everybody. But so that's just my thinking on it. Is I don't think it's setting any precedents, but I think we've set a precedence already by saying we want to know, and that way it's out in the open and we will manage it from there.
If I can wonder out loud, I'm wondering if it would make any sense for the Legal Affairs Committee to do the type of public record search that Ms. Reed mentioned, and we would end up compiling that and having that as a subcommittee document posted on the website. So to the extent that Gibson Dunn's contributions are a matter of public record, and if we could actually do the work and make sure that we are, I don't know, in some way doing due diligence and having having documentation on our website of all of that. Commissioner Toledo.
My understanding is that that was done, that we did do a research into the conflict of interest documentation. And Commissioner Yee might have more information on that, but I believe we pulled all the publicly accessible information and we sent it to the firms to verify. And I believe that that was made public and posted on our website as well.
That's correct. Our staff did that research on the verification report that was posted publicly. This is an important matter. I think the Legal Affairs Committee could definitely follow up on these further items that Ms. Reed mentions and research why they appeared in her work and not in ours, and prepare a memo just reporting on what we find, what were matters of interpretation, what were possibly any actual lapses of disclosure, and document that. And maybe prepare that in time, to present at the same time as the final draft agreements are approved, before they're approved.
Good, thank you. So then I would like to take the first motion on authorizing the Legal Affairs Committee to begin discussions with Strumwasser, Wucher, and David Becker towards developing an agreement for them to be our VRA counsel. So can we have the roll called for that vote, please?
Yes, Chair. Commissioner Sanai.
Yes.
Commissioner Taylor.
Yes.
Commissioner Toledo.
Yes.
Commissioner Turner.
Yes.
Commissioner Vasquez.
Yes.
Commissioner Yee.
Yes.
Commissioner Ahmad.
Yes.
Commissioner Akutagawa.
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Fernandez.
Yes.
Commissioner Fornashari.
Yes.
Commissioner Kennedy.
Yes.
And there were 2 absences, but the motion passes.
Thank you. The next motion would be likewise to instruct the Legal Affairs Committee to begin discussions with Strumwasser, Wucher, and David Becker towards developing an agreement for them to act as our as outside litigation counsel to the commission. Director Hernandez.
Yes, and just to confirm, there a friendly amendment that was added to that the Legal Affairs Committee differentiate the roles of the different participants, Chief Counsel, Subcommittee, and also include cost as part of the motion. Okay. Commissioner Lamont and Commissioner Sadwani are absent. Commissioner Sanai.
Yes.
Commissioner Taylor.
Yes.
Commissioner Toledo.
Yes.
Commissioner Turner.
Yes.
Commissioner Vasquez.
Yes.
Commissioner Yee.
Yes.
Commissioner Ahmad.
Yes.
Commissioner Akutagawa.
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Fernandez.
Yes.
Commissioner Fornashari.
Yes.
Commissioner Kennedy.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes for Strumwasser to be litigation counsel.
Okay, and the third motion is to direct the Legal Affairs Committee to initiate discussions with Gibson Dunn towards reaching agreement for them to also serve as outside litigation counsel. Director Hernandez, you'll repeat the other elements of the friendly amendment.
Yes, the friendly amendment for the Legal Affairs Committee to differentiate the roles of the Chief Counsel, subcommittees, and include costs.
Very good.
Once again, Commissioner Lamont and Commissioner Sadwani are not available. We'll begin with Commissioner Sanai.
I'm not used to being first. Yes.
Commissioner Taylor.
Abstain.
Commissioner Toledo.
Yes.
Commissioner Turner.
Yes.
Commissioner Vasquez.
Yes.
Commissioner Yee.
Yes.
Commissioner Ahmad.
Yes.
Commissioner Akutagawa.
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
Abstain.
Commissioner Fernandez.
Yes.
Commissioner Fornashari.
Yes.
Commissioner Kennedy.
Yes.
Okay, give me one moment. Commissioners, the motion passes.
Thank you, Director Hernandez. Okay, at this point, I would like to turn the meeting over to Director Hernandez for further.
Question?
Yes. Commissioner Fernandez.
I just want to confirm with Commissioners Yee and Toledo, the extra, I guess, review that we're doing for Gibson Dunn. I just want to make sure that it was also done for the other litigation attorney, Stromgwasser, Wuscher. I just want to make sure we're being fair to both or equitable. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Fernandez. I'd like to turn the meeting over to Director Hernandez for further discussion regarding the budget.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I wanted to circle back and let you know that we believe we have sufficient funds available for the postage regarding the COI return mail that we were discussing. So with that, the budget remains the same as I presented on Monday, and I would like to have the Commission approve that budget. Commissioner Fernandez.
You want a motion then, Executive Director Hernandez?
Yes, I'm looking for a motion.
Okay, I move that we accept the budget as was presented on, was it Monday? Monday.
Yes.
On March 29th.
And Commissioner Fornashari has seconded. Sorry, I have wildlife scampering by outside. I had to see what it was.
Anything good?
No, I think it was a very fat squirrel. So is there discussion on this motion? Commissioner Ahmed.
Just a clarifying question. Are we looking to approve the budget so we can make the necessary requests during May revision? Is that what it? Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Katie, could you please call for public comment on approval of the budget as submitted by Director Hernandez on Monday?
Yes, Chair. In order to maximize transparency and public participation in our process, the Commissioners will be taking public comment by phone. To call in, dial the telephone number provided on the live stream feed. It is 877-853-5247. When prompted, enter the meeting ID number provided on the live stream feed. It is 923-1796-5628 for this meeting. When prompted to enter a participant ID, simply press the pound key. Once you have dialed in, you will be placed in a queue. To indicate you wish to comment, please press star 9. This will raise your hand for the moderator indicating you wish to comment. When it is your turn to speak, you'll hear a message that says the host would like you to talk and to press star 6 to speak. If you would like to give your name, please state and spell it for the record. You are not required to provide your name to give public comment. Please make sure to mute your computer or live stream audio to prevent any feedback or distortion during your call. Once you are waiting in the queue, be alert for when it is your turn to speak, and again, please turn down the live stream volume. The Commission is taking public comment on approval of the budget presented by Director Hernandez on 3/29. And for anybody in the queue, again, if you would like to comment, please press star 9 to raise your hand indicating you wish to comment. But for right now, Chair, we do not have anybody with a raised hand in the queue.
Okay. Let's give it 2 minutes. Director Hernandez.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just wanted to mention that the email that we received from the legislature has been posted on our website for anyone to see. If they had any questions about that.
And the instructions are complete on the stream, Chair.
Okay. We'll give it just a bit longer. Okay, Director Hernandez, could you please call for the vote then?
We will begin again with Commissioner Sanai since Commissioner Lamont and Sadwani are not available. Commissioner Sanai.
Here. I mean, yes.
Commissioner Taylor.
Here, yes.
Commissioner Toledo.
Yes.
Commissioner Turner.
Yes.
Commissioner Vasquez.
Half here and yes.
Commissioner Yee.
Yes.
Commissioner Ahmad.
Yes.
Commissioner Akutagawa.
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Fernandez.
Yes.
Commissioner Fornashari.
Yes.
And Commissioner Kennedy.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you.
Very good. Looking back at my agenda, I had circled language access, and I recall that Commissioner Fernandez was not in the meeting at that point, and I don't think Commissioner Akutagawa was either. So I wanted to circle back and make sure that we've addressed anything from the language access subcommittee. Commissioner Fernandez.
I was gone for a couple hours and I did go back to review the video, and Commissioner Akutagawa did provide an update.
Okay.
For that, she came back.
Okay, so I just didn't scratch
Thank
it
you.
off my agenda. Thank you. Okay. The next item is discussion of future meeting dates and agenda items. We have a meeting scheduled for Tuesday the 6th in the evening, I believe it is, as an action meeting. And I just want to touch base with commissioners and get your sense of whether that meeting is indeed needed or whether we would cancel that meeting and have our next meeting as scheduled on the 12th and 13th of April. Director Hernandez, your thoughts on that?
I believe we had the one of the committees thinking about meeting on that day. I would defer to them to see if that is still part of the plan.
Okay. Commissioner Sinai?
Yeah, the design working group was planning on meeting from 2 to 3:30 that day. We could, well, we may be able just to save, it's about saving the money, right? If we're not having the later meeting, because I'm afraid if we, yeah, go ahead, Neil.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. That was rude. I'm sorry. I interrupted you. I apologize. Yeah, looking at what we have, the agenda for that day was pretty light too, and we could include that on the meeting on the 14th. We have a 4-hour chunk on the 14th. So if we're not going to have any or a business meeting that day, we'll move those agenda items to the 14th.
Okay. Let me ask the data management subcommittee how things are going and whether or when you think you might need the full commission to act on anything.
We won't have anything for April 6th.
Okay. Okay. Commissioner Akutagawa?
Could I request that the public input design meeting be held on Monday the 12th instead of the 14th? Or is there a reason why it would need to be held at the end of the meeting?
Marion, what are our constraints at this point?
Since you have a general commission meeting scheduled for the 12th, you could also include the meeting of the Public Input Committee during that meeting if you wish to.
Right, but then could the full commission meeting extend over onto the 14th if we needed to in order to get through the full agenda?
Yes, you can continue a meeting to another date that's near proximity.
Okay, very good. Commissioner Sinai?
Just clarity, I guess when I heard April 12th, it was before the 1 to 8 p.m. meeting. And I don't know if that's what Commissioner Akutagawa meant or take part of the April 12th meeting to create it. And I'll just say that the reason we went with April 14th versus or adding it on to the 12th or the 13th was that a 1 to 8 meeting is already long enough, and we had already been exhausted from those meetings, and we just thought that adding the public design, the design working group could be exhausting, but if we put it in the front, it won't be as exhausting and we'll still have all your attention.
Okay. Commissioner Yee or Commissioner Toledo, are you looking for meeting date for the Legal Affairs Committee for any reason at this point?
Well, we have a bunch of work to do for sure. Commissioner Toledo will be coming in as chair in April.
I think we have one date set, right? If that's, and my understanding was If I looked in my records, I believe it's the 14th. Correct me if I'm wrong, Commissioner Yee.
I believe that's right. That's correct.
So at this point, the 14th, as long as that's calendared, I think we should be okay with that. If we need additional, we'll reach back out to the chair and have a conversation.
Okay, I have Commissioner Fernandez and then Commissioner Anderson.
I do know when initially we talked about the dates, I did recommend having it on the 12th, but then I also have that. I don't know if this is still accurate. Commissioner Turner would not be here on the 12th. Is that correct? So I think there was a conflict either way. But it's a later meeting. It's a is that a later meeting, 1 to 8 or 9 or something like that?
Yeah, it is. And I'll be out from 1 to 2, either direction, wherever we put it.
Okay, Commissioner Anderson.
I'm just concerned. I know if we don't need meetings, we'd like to save them and have them at another time. I know there's the VRA, or what is it, the racialized polarized voting, that that information that needs to get presented at some point. As you saw the line drawers present, there's a lot of questions out there that we actually have to start addressing, and a lot of that involves the commission working on coming to grips with things, and the idea was, which I think you might have seen in one of the slides, how they kind of said, here's a topic, here's a topic, here's a topic. Because of their depth of information, we were sort of going along the lines of, it might be good almost every single meeting to have them do one topic. So we delve into that a bit more. And some of them work with the subcommittee, some don't. Some are overlapping. But I'm concerned if we just skip these, we all of a sudden our time will be, we won't know enough ahead of time to be efficient with our line drawing and our whole putting all this together. So I really want us to really consider that, but also the and how the VRA and the line drawers are working together.
Very good. I have Commissioner Turner followed by Commissioner Yee.
Yeah, looking at the schedule, Chair, I'm wondering, do we know yet what the topic, exact topic is going to be during the chunk of time we have for commission training on Saturday the 17th? Because I'm wondering if some of those pieces can be included or agendized for that training time.
Yeah, unless Commissioner Anderson has further information, I'm not aware of anything specific yet. Commissioner Anderson.
Yeah. We haven't actually put it all down, but yes, are there multiple ideas out there that people are just dying to, get it in front of us? Absolutely. There'd be more than enough information for a full day's meeting and training of things, because there's a lot of items to consider, and we often don't make the decision until it's put right in front of us. So, and there's no better way to actually come to grips with anything than to actually have to try to do it. So the specifics of it, we're actually going to work on roughly tomorrow, because the agenda has to go out, and then really move forward with on Monday with really kind of hovering out what's going to be presented when. So yes, in terms of, if you're just saying we'll do multiple workshops on that day.
Well, I was saying multiple workshops, but also specific to the point you just raised as far as the chunk of questions that needed to be discussed that was just presented by the line drawers. I was wondering if we could, as part of that training, also start to address some of those issues.
Oh, I'm hoping to address some of those as we go, like each time address sections, because it's too much to try to do all of them at one time. They're just too many. But I see Commissioner Sinai's wild.
Sure. Well, I've got Commissioner Yee next, and then Commissioner Sinai.
Just quickly, the VRA subcommittee's presentation with the PPIC group on demographics is landing on April 26 or 27.
Very good. Thank you. Commissioner Sinai?
The way we're looking at the design working group, the 14th, and depending if the 20th is needed or not, the 14th and the 20th, a lot of those questions would be kind of grappled with and then brought to the larger commission, because those are a lot of the design questions. So we already had that in mind, and that's why we've also been capturing the questions that have been coming up during commission meetings, public comments, and the design working group. So we're so we do have that on our radar.
Okay. From my perspective, the coming into April, the main item that I foresaw possibly landing on or needing us to meet on the 6th of April was if we had not completed the discussion and voting on the 3 motions regarding legal counsel today. Since we managed to make it through all 3 of those, unless we anticipate that the Legal Affairs Committee will be able to complete all of that. I didn't think so. So I'm not seeing a need for the meeting on the 6th, and the meeting on the 6th was tentatively scheduled in case we needed urgent action that could not wait until the following meeting. Commissioner Anderson.
Just on that one, the VRA though, that certainly could go ahead, right? And then they would need, if they say, wow, great, then does the commission need to vote on it?
But what exactly in relation to VRA?
VRA,
we've heard that
the VRA council. We have not approved that. We've said, please, please
initiate negotiations towards an agreement, right? That would come back for action, but I don't think we'll have an agreement.
A full agreement. Got it.
Right, by Tuesday.
Nope, got it.
Okay. So with that, we will cancel the meeting on Tuesday. We will next meet on the 12th and 13th of April. Public should note that those meetings on Monday the 12th and Tuesday the 13th will start at 1 p.m., not at our regular 9:30 a.m. start time. Commissioner Sinai.
And then can we just say that if when building the agenda for the 12th and 13th, there looks like there's at least 4 hours for the design, we would cancel the design on the 14th and move it in. But if not, we'll keep the 14th.
Okay, I'll take a look at that and
let me say 3 hours, not 4 hours. 4 hours is way too long for design. So 3 hours and 15 minutes, as Neil likes to say. Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Fornatari likes to say for our break.
Very good. So with that, we would turn to Katie to request any general public comment before we close this meeting.
Yes, Chair. Caught me taking a bite of food. Okay. In order to maximize transparency and public participation in our process, the commissioners will be taking public comment by phone. To call in, dial the telephone number provided on the live stream feed. It is 877-853-5247. When prompted, enter the meeting ID number provided on the live stream feed. It is 923-1796-5628 for this meeting. When prompted to enter a participant ID, simply press the pound key. Once you have dialed in, you will be placed in a queue. To indicate you wish to comment, please press *9. This will raise your hand for the moderator. When it is your turn to speak, you will hear a message that says the host would like you to talk and to press *6 to speak. If you would like to give your name, please state and spell it for the record. You are not required to provide your name to give public comment. Please make sure to mute your computer or live stream audio to prevent any feedback or distortion during your call. Once you are waiting in the queue, be alert for when it is your turn to speak, and again, please turn down the live stream volume. And the Commission is taking general end-of-the-day public comment at this time, and we do not have anyone in the queue with their hand raised.
Okay, we will wait for a minute or so to let the instructions catch up and see if anyone does call in and raise their hand.
And our instructions are complete on the stream, Chair.
Thank you. We'll hold on a little bit longer. And for those interested, there is a public input meeting design subcommittee scheduled after lunch. Okay, very good. Thank you. Commissioners, thank you to members of the public who are with us. And the full commission will meet next on Monday, the 12th of April at 1 p.m. Meeting adjourned.